Most people think discipline is how you build habits. But if discipline worked, habits wouldn't feel this hard. Most habits fail for 4 simple reasons. You forget them, you don't want to do them, they feel hard to start, or they don't feel rewarding. Atomic Habits explains this with 4 simple laws. In this video, I'll break them down and show how they reduce the need for discipline. To see why these laws work, you first need to understand how habits actually form. Every habit follows the same simple loop. First, there is a cue. Something triggers the habit. Then there is a craving. You want a change or a feeling. Next comes the action or response. This is the habit itself. And finally, there's a reward. This is what teaches your brain to repeat it. Most people try to use discipline at the action step. They try to force themselves to act. The book explains that habits don't fail because of willpower. They fail because the system is broken. Atomic Habits takes a different approach. It changes the steps before the action. So discipline isn't doing all the work. That's exactly what the 4 laws are designed to do. Each law changes one part of the habit loop, so habits become easier without needing more discipline. The first law is simple. Make it obvious. Most habits fail because you forget to do them, not because you are lazy, you just don't remember. If a habit isn't obvious, discipline has to step in and remind you, and that's exhausting. Atomic Habits says the goal is to design your environment so the habit reminds you, not your willpower. For example, if you want to read more, but your book is hidden on a shelf, you will forget about it. But if the book is on your desk or your bed, it becomes obvious. You don't need discipline to remember, you just see it. When a habit is obvious, you don't have to think about it. Less thinking means less resistance, and less resistance means less discipline. The book explains that your environment is often more powerful than motivation. What you see shapes what you do. This also works for breaking bad habits. To break a habit, do the opposite. Make it invisible. If you want to stop checking your phone, don't keep it on your desk. Put it in another room. When the cue disappears, the habit loses its power. Once a habit is obvious, the next question is simple. Do you actually want to do it? That's where the second law comes in. Make it attractive. Even if a habit is obvious, you won't do it if you don't want to. Discipline usually fails here. You try to force yourself to do something you don't feel like doing. Atomic Habits takes a different approach. Instead of forcing habits, it changes how you feel about them. Your brain is wired to repeat things that feel good. If a habit feels boring, uncomfortable, or annoying, your brain will avoid it. That's why motivation drops so fast. For example, if you want to work out, but you hate the workout, discipline has to carry the habit. But if you make the workout more enjoyable, like listening to music you like, or doing an exercise that you enjoy, the habit feels easier to start. When a habit is attractive, you don't have to force yourself as much. Want pulls you forward instead of discipline pushing you. The book explains that we repeat habits because they satisfy a craving. When the craving is stronger, the habit is easier to repeat. This also works for breaking bad habits. To break a habit, do the opposite. Make it unattractive. If you want to stop eating junk food, stop thinking about how it tastes. Think about how it makes you feel after. When the habit feels less appealing, you rely less on discipline to avoid it. Once a habit is obvious and attractive, there is still another problem. It still might feel hard to start. That's where the third law comes in. Make it easy. Even if a habit is obvious and attractive, you won't do it if it feels hard. This is where most habits break down. Not because people don't care, but because the habit feels like too much work. Your brain avoids effort. The harder something feels, the more discipline it takes to start. And discipline runs out fast. For example, if you want to work out, but your workout takes an hour, requires equipment, and needs a lot of planning, you will keep putting it off. But if your only goal is to do 5 push-ups, the habit feels easy. Starting doesn't require discipline, you just begin. When a habit is easy, you don't need to convince yourself. There's less friction, less resistance, and less discipline. The book explains that habits form based on repetition, not intensity. It's better to start small and repeat than to go big and quit. This also works for breaking bad habits. To break a habit, do the opposite. Make it difficult. If you want to stop watching too much YouTube, log out of your account or delete the app from your phone. When a habit is harder to start, you rely less on discipline to avoid it. Once a habit is obvious, attractive, and easy, there is still one last problem. You need a reason to repeat it. That's where the fourth law comes in. Make it satisfying. Even if a habit is obvious, attractive, and easy, it won't last if it doesn't feel rewarding. Your brain decides what to repeat based on what feels good in the moment. If a habit doesn't feel good, your brain won't remember it as important. If your brain doesn't remember it, the habit won't stick. For example, if you are trying to save money, the reward is far in the future. That makes the habit hard to repeat. But if you track your savings and watch the number go up, the habit feels satisfying right away. You get a small win, and small wins keep habits alive. When a habit feels satisfying, your brain wants to repeat it. You don't need discipline to force the habit. The reward pulls you back. The book explains that what gets rewarded gets repeated. Immediate rewards make habits stick. This also works for breaking bad habits. To break a habit, do the opposite. Make it unsatisfying. If you want to stop skipping workouts, track every time you miss one. When a habit feels worse to repeat, you rely less on discipline to stop. When you put all 4 laws together, habits stop depending on discipline. They run on a system instead. And if you want to understand why forcing yourself usually backfires, watch this next. Remember, the path is yours to walk. And as always, I'm in your corner, rooting for you.